Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. And Mike, I have to do a little disclaimer at the beginning of every one of these that we do. Now, I've told by our web team that I'm supposed to say the things like and subscribe. If you're not subscribed to the Big Trail Nation on YouTube, please subscribe, guys. It helps us do our job. It helps us when it comes to advertising, things like that. If you want to keep watching Ask Mike every week, like and subscribe on the video. Some of y'all comment, which is great as well, but make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Okay, now that I've gotten through that housekeeping, let's jump into the questions. Why don't we? Lanny has a question about John Calipari's press conference today. Been reading about Cal's presser. Did he really say he'd done no teamwork with his players so far, just individual development?
Well, sort of. It was a little bit misleading. I mean, he didn't say that they hadn't been out there going up against each other's 5-on-5, but he said they haven't really installed their offense, their defense, schemes, things that they're going to do. Obviously, you have to be able to do when the season starts. He said this summer has been totally about individual player development, and boy, did he say a lot about that. I don't even know where to start. One of the things he talked about was that he has always believed that players that play under him need to, when they leave his program, be able to say, I'm the best I've ever been at basketball. And that is his goal with these guys. Now, what does that mean? He said, first of all, we started with the basics, which is you got to be in shape. And he said, we've spent a lot of time this summer developing them physically. He said, weight training. Every morning, everybody has to be at breakfast on time, and then we do weight training. And he said two of the parents, I think, had already come in, and the first thing they did when they saw their kid was going, whoa, he's gotten bigger, he looks stronger. And he said, that's what we want. He also talked a lot about this is a speed team, but speed doesn't necessarily come on a basketball floor because you're fast. He said, basketball players don't always know how to run. So he said, what we're going to do, and they're taking a break right now because they've been going all summer. He said, I'm going to go on a Jersey vacation. He's going to the Jersey Shore. I guess he likes it there. And the players are going to get some time off before school starts. But he said, when we start back up, we're going to bring in the sprint coach from the track team to teach these guys how to run, because there's a difference between running on a basketball floor and really learning how to use your legs and be as fast as you can be. Now, clearly he wants them to play fast, but he said one of the things you have to learn is play fast, but be slow mentally.
Yes.
In other words,
don't
let the speed of the game have your brain turning so fast that you make mistakes. And he said, we've got drills that teach you how to do that. So that was interesting. Then he got into this concept of think big, but work bigger. Now, this was interesting. He talked about how Arnold Palmer went over to, present some award or get some award from some.
He's going to make a golf course over. He's going to make a golf course over.
But there was a king involved. It was some country. I
Yeah.
don't remember the country. But there was a golf course involved. And so they told him, now when you talk to the king, he's going to probably give you something. And don't say no or anything like it. It's proper procedure for you to say yes.
Always accept gifts from kings. Remember that.
So when he finally got to talk to this king, the king said, what would you like from us? And he was stunned by that because he thought he was just going to be given something. And the guy's asking, what do you want? And he said, well, okay, I'd like a golf club. And what he thought was maybe he will send me a golf club, a driver with a lot of diamonds on it.
Yeah, gold-plated.
Gold-plated, so he could put it in his office and show, hey, I got this from the king of this country for designing a golf course over there. And he said, nothing happened. And then he finally got an envelope, and there was nothing in it, no box, no driver, nothing like that. And he's going, what's this? And he reads it. It says, thank you for being here. And then he digs around and he finds something else in there, and it said that he had the deed to a golf course. They gave him a golf course over there.
They gave him a golf club.
So that was Calipari's way of saying, he said, kings think bigger. When you're a king, you don't think under ordinary possibilities. You think bigger on everything. He said, I want our players to think bigger. But he said, I want them to work harder than that, because you have to work hard to achieve those goals. So I thought all of that stuff was interesting. He got asked things like, how comfortable are you here? And how comfortable is your wife here? Because the idea is they've been at Lexington all these years. Did they get here and not like it? Because of that story when he was on Dixon Street and he was in a condo that he said the Lindsays had provided, and he had to wear earbuds or ear plugs so he wouldn't hear the noise. And he said, no, we're settled into a house now. Talked about how his wife wanted to get all new furniture, and he said, I'm a hoarder, and he said, no, we got to bring this chair, and we got to have this, and so he's getting into it with Earl about what goes into the new place. But he said, as far as his wife being comfortable, he said, she grew up 2.5 hours from here. She's from Missouri. So we've already driven up there to her hometown and visited with people there. So she's totally comfortable with where we are. He said, as far as me, he said, I like living in college campus towns that are built around colleges. He said, I've done it. That's what I am, a basketball coach. He said, this place is like a lot of places like that. He said, you have the culture here, which is a college town, but you also can go to Dallas, you can go to Denver, you can go to Oklahoma City, you can go to Kansas City. You've got places you can go to. It's not like you're isolated here. He said, as far as me being comfortable, he said, the house we moved into is at the end of a cul-de-sac, and it's next to a golf course. And he said, I can get up in the morning and walk my dog with my hair all messed up and nobody sees it. Yes. And he said, that's my idea of being happy. So yes, I like it here. And this is an interesting thing he did. He said, we're going to need help. We're going to be successful, but it's not just us. We're going to have help from a lot of people. And this kind of blew my mind. He said, when this thing is said and done, if we've had a successful year, we will have been helped by as many as 1,000 people. I'm like, 1,000 people? He said, each one of them will be somebody that we ask, could you help us do this? Could you help us do that? And he said, they'll find out. We're going to ask. If you're a Hog fan, a Hog supporter, and you're in a position to help us, or we'll ask somebody, who can help us do this? And then you'll get a call and they'll say, could you help them do this? And he said, when it's all said and done, I'm saying that probably close to 1,000 people will be able to say, hey, I played a part in that. So I thought that was all interesting. Then this was a big deal to me because when I read that story a couple of weeks ago about Brewer, I was like, what's the deal with that? We're going to talk about that here in a minute, but he redefined his role and kind of, well, not redefined it, he defined it further, so that was interesting. So, and then he talked about the success that he had early on at Kentucky. These Kentucky fans are annoyed, always talk about, yeah, he's really good for a few years and then everything went bad on us, And he said, we had that early success against Kentucky, and they were talking about Kenny Payne, I guess, right?
Yeah, probably.
And how he went to Louisville, but when John Calipari had his good success early at Kentucky, Payne was with him.
Yes.
So now he's going to be with him again.
Absolutely.
And he said, yes, we had a great run. He said, we're going to have a good run again together. That's a real good development. But he said, don't forget that Arkansas had that same kind of run in the early to mid-'90s under Nolan Richardson. Mm-hmm. And he said, we want our players to understand that they're not just coming in to say, I'm not coming here to just sort of put a program on the map in basketball that's never had success. Yeah. This basketball program has had success. People just need to be reminded of it.
That's what I took away. Because you mentioned all those things, but I thought one of the biggest things that my ears perked up when I was listening to it, when he was asked about his recruiting pitch to players. And he said the recruiting pitch hasn't changed. The place has changed, but the recruiting pitch is still the same. And to me, that says all those Kentucky people out there, let's be honest, right? Because there are Kentucky people out there going, how are you going to recruit at Arkansas? How are you going to recruit? I even asked him in his introductory press conference, what's your recruiting strategy? The recruiting pitch hasn't changed for him. The place has changed. The pitch is still the same, which says to me, to all those Kentucky people going, the facilities are different. You're going to have a tough time recruiting them to the Hill. How do you like him now? How do you like him now? His recruiting pitch hasn't changed, just the place has. I thought that was really interesting to hear, and I like when he said, we don't want you if you go out and you drink and you club and you do all of those things.
Well, that was in response to apparently somebody had recorded his recruiting visit.
Years ago. Yeah,
somebody,
that was at Kentucky.
He thinks a relative that was there during the recruiting visit used an iPod or a laptop or something to record what was going on, and he didn't know it. But he said he let him know. He said, I don't want phonies. I don't want a player that tells me he's all into basketball, but he's just sort of into basketball. You have to be totally committed and don't try to fake it, because I'll be able to see it. He said, I don't want somebody that parties and chases girls around all the time and drinks a lot.
Great.
He said, you got to come in here and be dedicated.
Yeah.
So all of that was good. I thought it was a great press conference.
I think it was too. He went on for 40 minutes as well, which is crazy to me. I mean, he talked a lot and had a lot to say.
And here's what happens. This guy gets asked a question. He admitted it. He gets asked a question. There's no telling where he will end up with that question.
he
might get ask a question about his offense and end up talking about his dog.
Yeah. But it's great, though, because I feel like there's a sense of, I'm going to tell you everything. I'm going to give you all the information I got. Here's what I have for you. I felt like I came out of the press conference learning a lot about him, learning a lot about the team. So we're going to get more into it. Mousetown wants to know, did Trevon Brazile explain why he left Arkansas and then came back? Was he mad at Muss?
No, he never mentioned Musselman and was pretty low-key about the whole thing. He said that he just came to the conclusion, of course, he entered the draft and then withdrew.
Yes.
And he said he just came to the conclusion, and I'm assuming he was told this by the draft people, by the NBA people, that he needed more development. And he said, when I realized who was coaching here, that was a no-brainer decision, because Calipari does have a reputation of developing players that get to the NBA. In fact, Calipari himself said that he had one draft where the first two players in the draft were from Kentucky.
Yes.
I think that was Kentucky. He had another one where he had how many lottery picks in one group? Four lottery picks.
4 lottery picks, yeah.
I mean, he was listing all these things that they've done successfully in the draft, and Trevon Brazile was basically saying, if you want to go to the NBA, he's the guy that can get you there.
Absolutely, and players know that. I mean, that was said many a times. So when he was hired here, that was the first thing his former players said, is like, this is the guy that can develop you. If you want to play basketball, you want to play for Coach Cal. And I thought it was interesting that Cal even said, he's better than I thought he was, which is kind of funny to people, everyone going, well, how's Trevon doing? How's Trevon doing with the rest of the team? Well, Coach Cal even addressed it.
But he did mention playing 9 players. He's still sticking to that. And he said, I got 3 guards, 3 wings, and three centers.
Yeah.
And I think Brazile was the 10th, wasn't he?
No, I think Brazile was in that 9. Yeah,
okay,
I think Brazile was in that 9.
But he would be part of the 3 bigs.
Yes, exactly. And
he also talked about the roles and telling them what, like who's the 7'2" guy? I keep forgetting his name.
Big Z?
Big Z.
Yeah, Big Z.
He said he wants to be
Shoot
a three-point. He said, nope, not letting it.
I respect him for that, because that is not what I want to see from your big man. Do not lob up a 3. You got to get inside, right?
We need you to be an inside player. We got other guys that can shoot the 3s.
Yeah, I like that as well. Me as well. T.L. Slayton says, I know that Cal likes to recruit nationally, but I'm worried that he might overlook Arkansas and Oklahoma kids. We have some top talent in this area, too.
Okay, that was a question that I didn't use. It came in a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And I didn't use it because I wanted to wait a little bit longer and see if they offered anybody in-state. Well, since then, they've made a couple of in-state offers. Yeah. So we know that that's not true. He is going to offer in-state players, but referred to Ronnie Brewer. He further clarified that Brewer is not just a player, I don't know what they called him, player relations. What was that title?
Director of player development or something like that.
Player
Relations.
Player relations. In other words, keep players happy. That's what I thought it was. Hey, everything's going to be okay. Cal likes you, and make them happy. No, he's going to be in charge of in-state recruiting and the surrounding states, over in Oklahoma, down to the Dallas area, maybe up in Missouri. But he also said that as a part of his job, he's going to be the one that makes sure that former Razorbacks feel comfortable coming in here, because he wants out-of-state players who come into this program to understand the culture that this program has been before. Hey, we've got these former NBA guys, these former national championship guys. Hey, they were from Arkansas. They played here. He wants that connection, and Ronnie Brewer is the guy that's going to make it all happen. So I really look forward to that. Somebody asked me, well, would it be okay if the Kentucky players come in here? I think it would be.
Yeah.
The key is going to be Malik Monk, because that was a controversy, because he was the top player in Arkansas, and he decided to go to Kentucky, and everybody was mad about it. Would Malik be okay with coming here? I think he's already been in.
I don't know if he's been in or not.
I think I read that he came in, but
Okay.
I think he would. Fans forget that stuff.
Well, Coach Cal did make the point of saying any former player is welcome.
Yeah.
He did say that. He said, look, we've already had some Arkansas players come back. Jalen Williams said he's already met with Coach Cal and everything.
I mean, Malik would have loyalty to Cal. He'd come in here and help Arkansas recruit. So I don't have any problem with that. That's been there a long time ago, done that. He's in the NBA. You got an NBA player, wants to come in here and visit with the players. I got no issue with that, and I don't think Razorback fans do.
Yeah, and I like this Ronnie Brewer with the relationship with those former Hogs and making sure that the relationship is there with those guys. I like that that fantasy game that they're talking about setting up. I wonder when they're setting that up and doing all that.
Yeah, that could be good.
That could be real fun. I wonder if we'll be able to cover it or be in there to watch that game. I don't know. We'll have to find out, because that sounds like something we would love to see. WV Hog Fan says, we're picked to finish 14th in the conference and only had one preseason all-conference player. Will the team use this disrespect as motivation? Seems like we have a history of having our better seasons when we aren't expected to do so. Until we have consistent success on the gridiron, do you agree with me that we'll still be considered cellar dwellers along with Vanderbilt?
Well, we got a question like this last week, and I pointed out, this is the SEC media. So you got to take that with a grain of salt. These are people that you were with that week down in Dallas, and a lot of those people were talking to you because they knew you covered Arkansas, and they didn't know beans about Arkansas. Mm-hmm. So you're going to expect them to vote knowing what's going on?
No.
They don't know much. They knew about Petrino. That's about it. They didn't know anything. They didn't know who the starting quarterback was.
They didn't. And the other point I want to mention, last week we also talked about one person voting for South Carolina to win the SEC. I looked at the other polls just to see who else were people voting for. 2 people voted for Vanderbilt to win the SEC.
I mean, look how ridiculous that is.
Come on. Guys,
so don't worry about a stupid SEC Media Days poll, which is usually inaccurate. They'll generally get the top 2 or 3 teams right,
sure,
but after that, it's just wrong. Do I agree that in order to change that perception, Arkansas is going to have some consistency? Yes. It doesn't help when you're good for a couple of years and then you drop back down, because historically, since Arkansas joined the SEC, that's sort of been what they've done in football. They'll have a few good years, then all of a sudden things will go bad. Then they might pop back up under a new coach and have a couple of good years, like they had 3 good years under Petrino, and then fell apart again. And then Pittman had a couple of years, and then they've gone back down a little bit. So yes, until you win consistently, you're not going to get recognition around the conference by the media and probably by fans of other teams. Now, personally, I can't see why any Razorback fan would care what some other fan thinks about their program. Who cares what they think? The media, yeah, they ought to have more sense than that. But what are you going to do? Educate these people? I never voted in that Media Days poll.
You told me that,
I never one time voted in it because I didn't feel like I knew enough about a lot of the other teams to be accurate.
Right.
So I just didn't do it. Yeah. And you ought to have discipline. And but a lot of these guys are like, I want to vote in the poll. I want to be the guy.
Do.
They act like voting
do.
in the poll makes you some kind of a big shot. It's just dopey. I mean,
they act like it makes you a big shot by voting in the poll.
To me, there are some good overall SEC writers and TV people that do a good job of knowing overall what's going on in the league. I got no problem with them voting because they're good at what they do. The problem is there's just too much fluff there. There are too many people that just show up at media days. They're not legitimate media, and they hardly do anything beyond their own team and maybe top 2 or 3 teams out there that they're aware of, like Alabama and Georgia. I don't care what they think.
Yeah.
Why should you?
Well, exactly. You shouldn't take any notice of what they say. What matters is what happens on the field and the product on the field. So I agree with you there, Mike. And Hogs We Trust asks, with the coming increase in the number of scholarships, how about having it like before where there were junior varsity teams in football?
Well, you got to go back a long way.
I'm like, whoa.
I do remember when they had JV teams. And I think what he's proposing is something similar, and I don't know how often they do this in high schools.
Yeah.
But when back in the Stone Age when I played, yes, you had a JV team.
Back in the Stone Age.
Yes, it was in the 60s, and you did have a 62, I was on a JV team. The JV team mostly consisted of freshmen, and as I recall, that's the way it used to be here and in other schools in the old Southwest Conference, that your JV team would mostly be freshmen because they were ineligible in those days.
Sure, yeah.
And then a few other players that maybe were upperclassmen that weren't expected to play that week. So the idea was if you at least get them to play games, if something happens and they have to get called up to the varsity, they've done more than just hold a practice dummy. They've actually played in a game. So it may be a good idea. In high school when I played, you could go back and forth. You couldn't play in a JV game on Thursday and then play in a varsity game on Friday.
That was the same rule with Florida,
If they thought you were going to play, if the coaches thought you were going to play on a Friday night, they would not put you into a JV game.
Yeah.
Now, I played, and it was the first time I'd ever started. I hardly ever played in junior high. But I did get to start my freshman year, which was on the JV team. In fact, I was the defensive captain and got to deal with the referees, and that's when I learned that when you're trying to make a decision with the referee, every guy on your team is over there telling you what to do, and you have to tell them to shut up, you know.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. But then the next year, because I was a backup at my position, they moved me to the varsity. But they would, if they didn't think, and it was really dangerous, if they didn't think I was going to play, there were a few JV games they told me to go ahead and play in because I wasn't playing in varsity games. But they finally decided this is a dumb thing to do. So I stopped playing in the JV games pretty early. And about halfway through the season, the guy in front of me he went out and got drunk after a loss and fell asleep in his car and woke up with pneumonia. It got cold that night. So I come in on Monday and find out this guy's in the hospital with pneumonia. And the position coach told me, "You're playing, you're starting." And because I had been out there every day working with the varsity, I was able to make that transition. So this is a way of saying, yeah, there's a value to that, but come on, do I really think they're going to, because they're not really changing the number of guys on a team. What they're really doing with this new rule is just putting all those guys,
everybody
85
can
and
be
above
on,
is on scholarship.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're going to have more players. And I don't think the expense involved of playing two schedules and doing all that stuff, there's a reason why colleges stopped doing that decades ago. So it might be fun to be able to go to a JV game on a Thursday night. If you're a football nut like me, I'd love it.
Yeah.
Because you could watch young players play, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's too much hassle, and like you said, what are the finances involved, and it just more money and all this stuff. So there's just too many hoops to jump through. Did you have a JV and a varsity team in your high school? Because I had a freshman JV and varsity team.
No,
that was crazy. So
no, we just had JV and varsity.
I know we had
JV played Thursday nights or Thursday afternoons. We usually didn't play at night. They didn't want to turn the lights on for us and run up the electricity bill, so we played in the afternoon.
That's great. That is great.
Oh, it was cheap, man. We rode a crummy bus, the worst bus. They'd always pick out the worst bus in our school system, and they'd stick us on that bus. It was bad.
Yeah, we had enough players who wanted to play football, and this is Florida high schools for you. We had a freshman JV and varsity team.
That's
Isn't that
nuts.
Crazy? So yeah, a lot of players who wanted to play football there. Rob's 4516 says, winning the field position battle is key to teams that may be out-talented. What are your thoughts on how good our kick coverage units will be, both punt and kickoff, or just special teams in general, Mike?
Well, it's a good question, and if you could answer it, it would answer a lot of questions. And unfortunately, in the preseason, it's not just us the media can't answer it. I'm not even sure coaches know, because here's the thing: full speed blocking and tackling on a kickoff, on a punt coverage, where you're trying to tackle the punter, you're trying to block for the punter. When you're running down the field at full speed and guys collide with each other, that's where a lot of injuries happen. And I've watched a lot of preseasons in football over the last 4+ decades, and I haven't seen a lot of line up and let's run into each other. They just sort of simulate it, right? Until you get to the season, and then you find out how you're going to do. So I'd love to be able to tell you that Arkansas's blocking and tackling on the special teams is going to be good, and that because it is important. The field
Yeah,
position is really important. So what we're left with, we talk about punters.
Yeah, Devin
so
Bale,
this
right?
Devin Bale,
Yeah.
they brought him in from Northern Colorado, and he had punted averaged 41 yards per punt 2 years there. And he put the ball inside the 20-yard line 14 times. So that's a good number. If he can continue to do that, that'll be good. Now, we can talk about the punt returner because it's the same one they had last year, Isaiah Satenia.
Yeah.
And he was a redshirt freshman, so essentially playing for the first time, and he made all SEC freshman team.
Yeah.
And he was, I think if you combine, I wrote it down here somewhere, his combined returns, 23 kick returns for 500 yards, 15 punt returns for 180 and 1 touchdown, and that's good for 6th on the all-time Arkansas list for those two, punt returns and kickoff returns. So it looks like they're in good shape there. I just can't tell you much about the blocking and tackling and all that part.
What about the kicker battle going on?
Okay,
That's what I want to know about.
Well, that's because anytime you lose a guy like Cam Little, I mean, he was Mr. Automatic, and that is a big loss. Now, they went after Matthew Shipley. He's a transfer from Hawaii, and on the surface, his numbers are good. 14 of 18 there for 77.8% on his attempts with a season long of 51 yards, so that's pretty good. However, in the spring game, he was just 2 for 2, missed a 45-yarder, made a 40-yarder, missed a 40-yarder, and made a 33-yarder. So I think they weren't real happy with that, but you know, that's one game.
Well, that's what Sam mentioned. He said we do have a battle going on at kicker right now in the SEC Media Day. So he did mention that.
Cal Baruso, who has been a kickoff guy, left and came back, and I think he's the other guy competing for that job.
Yeah, I like Devin Bale, though. I said that after the spring game. He impressed me because, not only, you didn't mention it there, or maybe you did, but he was kicking into wind and, kicked a 60-yarder in a wind? I was like, okay. Good for him. So you got to like that. But, again, I'm interested to see for fall, that's one of the position groups we'll look at as the kicker. So
yeah, but again, it's hard to judge that. If you think we're hard, we don't see hardly any of that stuff. No. And you're not going to see it full speed. I don't even think the coaches do it full speed.
No, you definitely won't. But again, that's something to watch out for, what we do see in fall practices. Tommy Thompson says, thankfully the talking season is almost over. I hate reading social media between the last baseball game and the start of football. Yak, yak, yak. Hopefully we'll start getting some real information next week. Well, fall camp does start Wednesday, so there you go.
But I would caution him because what usually happens in fall camp is you just get more talking.
Yeah.
Because here's the problem. There's so much that we don't see. And I want to use last year as a good example. We didn't see any of these scrimmages. And I remember Sam Pittman coming in and they would give us these weird stats from a scrimmage. It wouldn't actually be typical stats. He'd say things like, we did this in a goal line situation and we blah, blah, blah. And you'd be trying to figure out what really happened there. And you weren't sure. And I think what was going on there is they were realizing that the offensive line was a problem. And we just didn't see it. And so we didn't tell you it was an issue because we didn't see it. And I don't blame Pittman for not coming out and going, hey, the offensive line stinks and we're not probably going to be very good if we don't do something about it. But that was in the preseason, and it was something we couldn't report because we never saw it. So we're limited. That's what I'm saying. Yes, we can give you information. I hate the idea that all we're really doing for the month, 2 weeks of camp and then 2 weeks of preseason when school starts before the first game. So it's about a month. I hate the idea that all we're doing is PR. Yeah. This looks good, that looks good. But it's hard to go to a practice and start looking around. What stinks around here? What looks bad, you can do that, but then all of a sudden, here's what you get. They go, hey, why are you saying that?
Yeah.
But I've done that, and I will continue to do that if I see it. And I don't care what they say over there. They can get mad at me, but my job is not to sit around and talk about how great everything is. So if I see something that looks bad, like all of a sudden the receivers start dropping a lot of passes, or defensive backs start getting beat left and right, or the other way around, the receivers get dominated, I'm going to talk about it a little bit. But we can't, by the nature of what we do, we cannot really give you what one game will give you, and it's the second game of the year, and that's when you're going to know about this football team when they go to Oklahoma State in a hostile environment that's sold out, and it's not a notoriously difficult place to play. You can ask OU about that. They've played in the Bedlam series year in and year out, and they're glad they're not having to play that anymore. So Arkansas goes in the middle of that. We'll see how it works out.
Yeah, and it's really early on that they get that. I mean, you said it, the second game of the season, so we'll know a lot of them, but at least we'll have something. I always say to people, at least we have something rather than just educated guessing, right?
The talking stuff continues. That's my whole point. It is talking without any real information, without any positive thing. You're not talking about what happened in a game. You're talking about what you think's going on or what we think's going on.
Like educated guessing based on what Sam Pittman has been saying. But he's not going to come out and say the worst things about the team, you know? So, and you're right. We get very, very little in these practices. So keep that in mind when we're talking about practice.
It's just better than right now when you're just sitting around going,
that's what I'm saying. It's very,
about?
I don't know what we're going to talk about. All we can say is what Sam Pittman and the players said at SEC Media Days. So at least it's better than that. Eddie Lynn wants to know, what is the real story on Arkansas and NIL money and recruiting? Are we losing players because we're getting outbid? If so, why? Are our boosters cheap or just mad? Why was the Edge program a bust?
Well, there's been some misinformation. The Edge program did not go away. Somebody told me, oh, it's gone. They got rid of it. No, they didn't. The guy at the top, I guess, resigned, and they've got a new person directing it. Now,
he stepped down recently due to personal reasons. So we don't know why, but he stepped down.
So this Edge program is not originally Edge, and it wasn't called Edge, but Arkansas's version of its NIL, its collective or whatever, that was managed by in-house at Arkansas. And they decided that other schools were doing a better job, so they would reorganize. And when they went and brought in this firm, and I think it's from California or somewhere, a lot of fans got mad about it because I've mentioned before, anybody that wants to be my friend on Facebook, I pretty much, unless I look in there and see something strange, there's a lot of people that have no connection to Arkansas. It'll be some girl 25 years old and she's not from Arkansas. And
don't think
and
that's
I'm like, I don't need you as a friend. But anybody that looks like they're a Hog fan, I'll let you be, because I want to go read what you're saying with your friends. And so I'm reading what people are saying about NIL on these message board, on these Facebook pages, where people are talking among themselves. And what are they basically doing? They're saying things like, I don't want to give money to them and then the money goes out of state. I've heard that they take 20% off the top. That's too much. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. But this was the kind of stuff that was affecting the Edge program, just based on what some people were saying among themselves. So I also think there's a lot of fans that still, and I think this is backwards thinking, because as long as we have the current system, and I believe it's going to change, but it hasn't changed yet. So as long as we have the no rules open bidding system, you have to play the game or you're going to get behind. And I think a lot of Razorback fans think, hey, it's not my job to give that money, it's boosters' jobs. Now, there was a really good article written where they explored boosters in Arkansas versus other places. And they talked about in this article this chicken or the egg thing. It says, is it better to have a program like Arkansas where you've got some billionaires and they can give this amount of money, or is it better to be like a TCU or an A&M or somebody like that from Texas where they got a bunch of millionaires? And you have some thoughts on that about Florida,
because I talked to some of my friends at Florida who are not millionaires or billionaires, right? But they're doctors and lawyers, and they're making good money, right? They're in the $200,000, $300,000 tax bracket, right? And they're giving money to NIL because they have indisposable income to give to NIL. And I think there's a lot of ways to combat this. One of them is maybe looking at taking away a state income tax, right? Letting the Arkansans have more money in their pockets. Maybe that they can use that indisposable income for whatever they need to use it for. But if you have people that are not even millionaires and billionaires, but you have a lot of graduates that are coming out becoming high tax bracket job people, whatever that job may be, you have more money to give to NIL and things like that.
I think the thinking has to change, or it won't get better. And here's what I'm saying about that. I think the day's going to come when there will be regulations on the open bidding of players. You won't get into these bidding contests,
sure, yes.
But you are now. And take a look at what just started to happen with basketball. The NIL money was there for basketball. I don't hear anybody complaining about that. Cal has brought in one of the top classes in the country, as he said in this press conference. He said there's a certain amount of satisfaction here because I started with 0 3 months ago. I didn't have a team. And now I look at the team I've got and I go, wow. Well, he didn't get that team. I mean, he can recruit and everybody, but it took NIL money to do that too.
Absolutely.
And I don't hear anybody complaining about that. Well, if he's successful and they do some damage this year, go into the NCAA tournament, win a lot, maybe get to a Final Four, whatever they do, hopefully some of these fans will start to realize that's what you got to do to win in football too. Yeah. You can't just have it, because I've seen some people say, well, I'm content to do it in basketball and baseball, but not football. Nah. And those people are mad at the guy at the top. But if this football team has success, I think they'll come around more.
But the thing is, that way of thinking, like you said, is backwards way of thinking, because you're going to be left in the dust.
That's right.
You're going to be starting, okay, so you start giving to the football program because they get rid of Sam Pittman, right? Yeah. Let's say you go, okay, you fired Sam Pittman, now let's start giving. Well, you're already behind the Texas A&Ms, the LSUs.
That will put you further behind.
Exactly. So now you're playing catch up. So I understand that way of thinking. I do. But I think there's a lot of people as well. You have those people out there. You also have people out there that I think still want, and I've talked about it on this show before, a little bit of transparency when it comes to Arkansas Edge. You can choose where your money goes, right? You can choose football, you can choose basketball, you can choose baseball.
Right now they don't have that.
They don't, because I had a fan reach out to me and said, Courtney, I'm really getting a little nervous with Arkansas Edge. And I said, why is that? And they said, because I've chosen my money to go to women's basketball, track and field. I don't want it going to any of the big programs. I want it to go into those smaller programs. And I've asked many a times, how is my money being used? Which athletes are benefiting? I've talked to people, I don't know how it's benefiting. They won't respond, right? And then he'll go out and he has a relationship with the coaches and the athletes. Hey, have you seen any of my money? No, we haven't. So what are you doing with it? That's the question, right? And so there needs to be some transparency there. And that's what I've said from the get-go. And maybe the new executive director will bring that in Edge, but I think some transparency would help a lot with some of those fans that are a little on the fence about giving. KY Hogg says, I guess Hogville is one of the sponsors of Ask Mike. Not really, well, yes, kind of, but we have a partnership with Hogville, so they're great.
Not a sponsor, but a partnership.
Not a sponsor, but we have a partnership with them. You'll see a lot of our articles on their website. You'll see a lot of Kevin Otis's, Dudley's articles on our website, KNWA. So not really a sponsor, as a partnership, but you signed up, which is great. The fans there talking about things I didn't see last spring, like Petrino going to a full house backfield, a power running game. Is that real?
Well, it came from a local on-site website. It's a local company that deals with the Razorbacks, right? A local website.
Yeah, a local website, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, you can say that.
And they wrote this, and we read it, and we're not quite sure what to make of it, because the guy that wrote the article appeared to be saying that Sam Pittman and Bobby Petrino had noticed this trend of SEC defenses, because of all the passing in the league, to go smaller with linebackers, smaller with secondary guys, quicker linemen for a better pass rush, but smaller. And that they had both agreed this would be a great time to unleash a power running game with it. Use a fullback or sometimes have a tight end lined up, and then suddenly they go into the backfield and they carry the ball or block or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And they talked about the return. They had made a decision to return the power eye to football. Okay, the problem with that is I don't remember anybody talking about that. So unless he has, and he could have inside information, I don't know. But they've never said that publicly, and we haven't seen evidence of it in the practices we saw last spring, and even in the spring game, I didn't see anything really unusual. Yes, they were going to run the ball, we knew that, but we don't know anything about for sure that. It sounds interesting.
It does. When I read it, I was like, okay, this actually is a really good idea or plan, if it's going to be a plan for this season.
So here's the deal. When we go over there, starting when is it, Thursday?
Wednesday is when practice starts.
First practice Wednesday. We'll look and see if we see anything that where a fullback lines up in the backfield or tight ends do weird things. I doubt even if they were doing it, they would show it to us.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, this is a positive development. I didn't know it had happened until today. Sam Pittman's always had the one thing I don't like about him is he does this Kirby Smart thing where Kirby doesn't let his assistant coaches talk to the media.
Yeah.
And Sam got here and said, hey, I'll let you talk to him once a year in the preseason, and then if we have a bowl game, they can talk before the bowl game, but that's it. And I'm thinking, what? And because a lot of the stories that I've done over the years have been done with assistant coaches because they've got insight that the head coach doesn't have. And that's all been out. Well, now Petrino is not only scheduled to talk once, but twice in the preseason. So he's going to have press conferences. He's going to get asked, hey, did you and Sam Pittman get together and decide to reinvent the power eye? Tell us about that.
Tell us about that. Are you going to do that this season?
And if it's true, he'll probably just say, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he'll probably go, I don't know. I've never heard that. I did reach out to one of the writers of the website. And so I did, full transparency, I did ask, like, hey, where did he get this information from? Is there something that we're not seeing here? He didn't say sources have told me or anything. Where is this coming from? So maybe I'll have an update for you next week on that, for that answer. Ash Giles wants to know, can we keep these basketball commits a secret? I love that. Every time Calipari lands a 5-star player, Kentucky fans come out of the bushes to remind us that it won't matter because he can't coach. I can't wait until he beats their butts. That's a great question.
Well, that would be the one way to stop it, I would think. And you're going to get a chance, but it's going to be tough because I've thought about that game for a long time, going into Rupp with the fans as mad at him as they will be, and that place seats 21,000 or something like that. So that could be a heck of a deal. Arkansas could lose that game and still have a good season, but that would be one way I think you could start shutting them up. Here's the thing that amazes me about those Kentucky fans. I've said before that, I have all these Facebook people. I'll just randomly check somebody's Facebook page and see what are they talking about. Are they talking about when they start talking about Razorback stuff? I'll read it. I'll sometimes step in and make a comment.
You do, yeah.
Well, okay, you're what reading our stuff? Well, so this one guy was having a discussion with 2 or 3 of his friends on his Facebook page about this recruit, this 5-star guy. They landed the top, supposedly the top point guard in the country last week, right?
Yeah. Oh, Darius Acuff, yeah.
So they were discussing that. Oh, it's really good. That's impressive. And out of nowhere, here comes this Kentucky fan, and he goes, yeah, well, you find out he can't coach him. And then they said something back to him, and then before long, I checked back later, and there was another one in there. And I'm going, how do they find this stuff? How do they get into a Facebook discussion with somebody that they don't even know? It's not like a group or anything. It's not like you can go on your phone and type up Razorback fans who like to discuss basketball, and then it pops up. He would have to know, oh, this guy might talk about this recruit. I don't know how they found the guy.
I don't know either, but man, it's Kentucky fans. Arkansas lives rent-free in your heads. Arkansas lives rent-free in y'all's heads, okay? I mean, literally, you don't have to comment.
But the way they approach it is they are this kindly group of opposing fans who think so much of Arkansas that they want to help Razorback fans be prepared for this giant disappointment.
No, that is not true at all.
That's what they act like.
No. Oh, my gosh. You remember when a couple of months ago they started coming for me in my pages?
I know, but I'm telling you, some of these people have come across like, hey, I'm just trying to be friendly. I'm just trying to help you. Just don't want you to be disappointed when it doesn't work.
Which ones are trying to be friendly?
I've read this stuff.
I have the hostile ones, Mike. Okay. I've only seen the hostile ones.
But I've seen the ones that are trying to come across as, hey, I'm just trying to help you out.
Yeah, but then they'll be like, Coach Cal can't coach, and he won't get out of the first round of the NCAA tournament.
That's true.
That's exactly what they'll say. It's the same thing every time. Pig's Feet asks, can you explain the increase of scholarships in baseball and how this will likely play out?
Well, there's no real secret to how it'll play out. You're going from 11.7 scholarships to what, 34?
34, yeah.
That's virtually every guy on the team. Not everybody.
Yeah.
But anybody that's going to contribute, not just the guys in the starting lineup, but anybody that contributes is probably going to get a full scholarship. So why is that different? I'll tell you two reasons. Number one, there have always been athletes from low-income families that when they get drafted out of high school, they have college offers, but they don't go because they're not going to get a full scholarship and they can't afford it.
Dave Van Horn has talked about that. He says we've lost out on guys because of that reason.
So there are all these guys that before this always didn't really have much of an option. Yeah, we'd like for our kid to go to college and get an education, but we just can't afford it. He'd get a partial scholarship and we can't afford the rest of it. And we're getting money here, so we're going to do that. Well, now you'll have that option. And then when you throw in NIL money, then I think the Dave Van Horns and the other college coaches are going to have a real weapon on their side to say to a kid, yeah, you got drafted in the 3rd round and you're going to get this amount of money, but guess what? We will give you a full ride and pay you this amount, and you're getting a college education. And I promise you, if you come through our program for 3 years, you'll be much more likely to get to the major leagues.
Yeah.
See, that's the big thing I've always said about coming out of high school and going straight into the minor league system. I'm sorry, they just don't develop. You don't get the individual attention that you get on a college team. No. You don't get the same experiences. You're riding buses and going to weird places. You're not flying around like the college teams. You don't live the way they live. You don't have.
Look at the facilities.
You don't have the facilities they have. I mean, I've talked to people that were in the minor league system and didn't make it, and they said, man, it was a mess. So what are your odds? I wish somebody would do it, and I know somebody could do this, and maybe they have. What are the odds of you getting to the major leagues having gone through 4 years of college as opposed to coming straight out?
That's a really good question.
Because I think the odds would go up. So what is your goal? To make a few money, make some money and spend a few years in minor league baseball riding buses all over the place? Or do you want to actually, when it's all said and done, make it to the big show, and make some real money? Yeah. And well, now if you can say, yeah, but you can talk his parents into it. Yeah. You don't have to afford this. We're affording it for you. And he's going to get this amount of NIL money. So I think that's how it's going to change baseball.
I think it's beautiful. I think it's been a long time coming. I have always been shocked when Dave talks about, well, the scholarship's 11.7. I'm going, 11.7?
Well, it means only one or two guys get full rides. Good players are getting books.
That's what I'm saying. Like, good players are not getting hardly anything. And you're like, oh my gosh, this needs to change. So I think it is a much welcome change when it comes to baseball. And we'll see how it gets implemented in the future. It still has a few months before it is official. It's part of the settlement that they're doing. So it's still a few months before it gets finalized and all of those things. But it'll be implemented before the 2025-2026 season. So very soon, if it all goes through. Our final question of today is one that I love. Mike, we're back. We're back talking about college football 25. I'm sorry.
I have permission, while you're giving this answer, to sit here and look like I'm mad and I don't care, because that's what they all say.
They do.
When you're talking about, they act like I'm mad because I don't like video games, so I'm going to sit here and be bored. I'm not bored, but I'm not going to sit here and do this the whole time either. I'm just going to listen to you and absorb what you're saying.
Okay, so Razor Alex 88, I know they brought down the question, but it is. He asked, Courtney, if you had the power to make changes for next year's college football game, what would some be? I would definitely make it able to play any game of a dynasty mode season outside the 1 year coaching. I love that. He also had some other things he would change in his answer, and I can't remember some of them.
One of them was Baylor does something.
Yeah, they didn't have some of the traditions at those teams. I looked that up, and I couldn't find why that was.
The one I remember was Texas Tech always has the masked rider.
Yes,
See, the first college game I ever went to, I was like 10 years old, and I'd only been to high school games, and my grandfather came in from Indiana and took me to a Tech game. So we're sitting there, and the game's about to start, and everybody's going crazy, and all of a sudden the team's going to come up. Here comes this Zorro character on a black horse, and he goes, he goes up the hill and back down the hill, and I'm going, holy smokes, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. So yeah, they got to show the masked rider.
I don't know why. I looked that up, and then I looked up the other one, which was why aren't FCS teams included in the game, all those FCS teams? Well, if they included all of those teams as well, the game would be double the size. And you guys would not like that, because there are already complaints out there about EA servers and how slow it is and how it cuts out and
I saw one guy complaining because a guy went 70 yards on a run, and every time somebody would approach him, he would just flip. He would turn a 360, just spin around. And in real life, if you spun around like that, somebody'd run over you.
So some of those things they have to fix, right? There's certain things in the game that they are fixing as well. EA has been very good about going, okay, we know that's a problem and we're going to fix it. So they're fixing things. What I would do instead of FCS teams, I would love to see FCS teams added, but you can do that in Team Builder, so you can go ahead and add those yourself if you want to look at Team Builder. But what I would do is just like really, really basic. You can play a game. My boyfriend has an Xbox. I have a PlayStation. we can play a quick matchup with each other. Like if we wanted to play very quickly Arkansas, Florida, we can do that. But we can't play Dynasty mode together. It's very weird that they allow cross-play on just exhibition games and not on Dynasty mode. Very strange. I would add that. That is a feature that a lot of people are asking for, so that is something that I would add. I also would go back and ask the announcers to correct some of the names that they pronounce, because it drives me up a wall when I'm playing with Arkansas, Mike. And Isaiah Satenya, he catches a beautiful pass and he's running down the field and they go, Sategna has it. And I go, why are you saying Sategna?
Well, it could just be a dumb announcer.
Well, but no, it's not no. I'm like, I need you to say the names correctly. Same with Luke Haas. They call him Luke Haas. And I'm like, guys, it's Luke Haas.
Drop the S, pronounce it like H-A-Z.
Yeah, exactly. Luke Haas. And I'm like, can you guys please pronounce the names of Arkansas players correctly? You can watch that, but I've noticed that on certain games when I played with Arkansas.
I just think it's realistic because meatball TV guys do that sometimes.
Okay, so there you go. There is a realism fact there. All right, there you go. So those are my things that I would change very briefly. I'm sure we'll have more questions on what we would do. Jacob, who plays the game as well, loves the game. We talk about it all the time. We're going to do on PTN Extra, so it's every Wednesday, we're going to do a PTN Extra where we break down the game for everybody. So if you're interested in that, that is coming on PTN Extra. Okay. But there you go.
Great.
So that's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.